All right, welcome to Cafe Chronicles. Tonight we have Scott Gwinnell. Thank you so much for doing this, Scott.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks, Ted.
Thank you so much. So, what you been up to lately?
Just got out of school, so just finished correcting papers and all that other fun stuff and submitting grades, and so now I'm kind of living life for me again, which is kind of fun because I can practice and work on composing and all that other great stuff. That's I think the original reason why I got into jazz music.
Yeah. We've known each other for a while, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, early 90s?
Yep, since Wayne State.
Yeah. You've always been one to practice. I remember you were heavily into practicing.
Yeah, definitely. I always felt like I needed to. I was never content, and it's still not content with, how I sound, and feel there's a next step to rise to.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Do you think you're addicted to it?
Yeah. So I sometimes I wonder, but I will tell you in complete and full disclosure that since I've started teaching more, one of the things that's had to go to the back seat has been the practice habit. So it's not that I feel guilty, because I know that you have to put your students first when it's school time, but it definitely is a nice feeling to kind of get into the things that that I've been watching, things on YouTube that I've been like, I really want to play this, and really want to learn this concept or this technique, and then also knowing that when I'm able to practice, I have more to bring to my students, and I have more between the passion of the music and the actual technique and stuff that I can be a little more there for them.
Yeah, because you're heavily into jazz education.
Yes,
right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I never realized I would be, coming up. I had no I don't want to say I had no interest in teaching at all. I mean, I come from I'm the fifth generation of teachers in my family. Huh? So, in fact, it actually kind of made me want to push back a little bit and kind of go off in my own direction. But realizing that I wanted to go, eventually wanting to go into that, I never did realize that one of the sacrifices I'd have to make would be, my own practicing, my own, artistic, input.
Yeah.
But when you see a student get better, when you see someone kind of reach a new height to their playing or singing, that it's such a wonderful, wonderful thing to watch. That it's as addictive as practicing and learning a new lick or learning a new chord change for yourself.
Let me ask you this. I don't know how I can ask this, but you do a fair number of gigs, right, for yourself, right? So
yes, way less than I used to, but for sure.
Can you take, like, when you play those gigs, somehow throw it like a practice in there? Do you know what I mean? I don't.
Sure. Oh, totally. One of my steady gigs has been a wonderful solo gig for the past 7 years that I've been doing at the Caucus Club, and it started out as a duo and then a solo gig, and so a solo piano gig is the perfect place to practice. I can learn new tunes. I can practice sections of songs. I can work on reharmonizing, putting new chords to tunes.
You're doing that while you're performing?
Yes.
Yeah. That's great.
It's a lot of fun. I can listen to tunes on the way down to the gig and play those on it. I can put tunes in new keys, and there was a gig I just did not too long ago where I said I'm going to do everything in the key of E. And everything you played, right, in the key of E. Yeah. So I decided that set would be the key of E set, And now not to tell you it was perfect.
Yeah.
Far from that. There were certain tunes, and for any jazz musicians listening, trying to do Along Came Betty or Stella by Starlight in the key of E when the keys themselves, flip around so much. There were a few creative notes. I'll put it that way. But it was for sure like keeping me like you said, like practicing, learning, and something that could have been just I wouldn't say boring. I mean, it's never boring, but maybe not as productive. And it turned it into a productive gig, and then you finish a set like that where you're giving yourself challenges, and then people will come up and say, "Oh yeah, that was awesome what you were doing," and I'm thinking, really?
Yeah.
Playing stuff in the key of E, but yeah, doing stuff like that is the way to kind of like practice when you don't have time to practice.
Yeah, because I thought about that. Because sometimes when I don't have time to practice, but I do have a couple gigs. I don't gig a lot, but when I do, I'll have my guitar in my hand all the time, and I'll just play and do scales or whatever, just when I'm sitting around because I don't have time to do it otherwise.
Absolutely.
And I thought about you. But I thought about you doing it while you're performing. It just came to my mind because I think that's how you are,
Yeah, definitely. The one thing when you're constantly going from place to place, or whether they're school engagements or gig engagements, and you don't have that much time, you really do get creative in your practice habits. Like so that's one of them. Another one is that I like to compose in the car, meaning what I'll do is I'll be driving to the gig and I'll use my recorder and sing melodies into it, or sing through chord changes that I'm hearing in my head, and kind of use those as I can memorize some of them I can't memorize, depending on the complexity of them. But I do, by recording it, when I go home, I can then kind of investigate a little bit more and determine if that was something that is a viable composition, or something that may just be a good
That's
thought.
great.
But
so you're taking the time that. Because is that like an inspirational time for you when you're driving?
it is because provided it's not like heavy traffic or something, and
Yeah. Starts that. Yeah.
yeah, provided it's not that, and I have enough open road to kind of dedicate a little bit of my concentration that way. It allows me to again keep engaged, to be musical and to not get stagnant. And that's the worst thing. I mean, as being an artist, when we feel like we're not moving forward, we feel like we're taking, 2 steps back.
Yeah.
I
always I try to go to the gym every day. What I do at the gym, we won't talk about that, but I always and I sit in the sauna, before I leave. I would start to get like inspiration for lyrics. Sure. While I'm sitting in the sauna, because sometimes I'll watch, documentaries while I'm in the sauna with my phone.
Yeah.
And then, I'll get in the shower and I'm like, all these lyrics come to my head. So I got to I step out of the shower, grab my phone and write the lyrics down. I get the most lyric writing done while I'm at the gym. I don't know why, but that's when it happens.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I have no idea why compositional ideas come to me in the car, but they do, and I record them, and then kind of hash through them a little bit later. And as I tell my students, you should be composing all the time, even though you don't know what you're composing for. And as long as you're tracking your ideas and documenting them, that for a solo piano work, it might be something for an orchestra. You never know what it's going to be for, but
or for someone else,
someone else. Sure.
It took me a long time to figure that out. Because to see a song through, or to see a piece through, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's like, this song sounds great, but I don't know if I really like it. But you know what? Somebody, in some other genre might dig it.
That's been a practice of composers for a long time. They, there's so many stories of composers saying this isn't the right tune for me, but is a great tune for you. I just read a story about the Carpenters, and there were people that were enamored by Karen's voice, and they would write songs saying this is going to be perfect for you guys. And some of their best known works, stuff written by Burt Bacharach, by Paul Williams, different lyricists and composers. They get an idea, they say, oh, this is a perfect Carpenter's idea, and then they they throw it out to them, it's not only a really good way of composing, but a mature way because you're aware of what's going on around you and the different artists who kind of represent the same sound that you do is in your writing that, they put forward in their performance.
But because, in the past I would go like, I suck and, this is terrible. But you know what?
Sure.
It's actually a good song, but just not for me,
Absolutely.
And it took me a long time to let that go. But once I did, I'd write the song and then put it aside, and I'd move on to the next one,
Absolutely.
So.
And just the fact that the faucet's running and the ideas are coming, that in itself is such a reward, even if they're not going to be a song that you're going to sing or play right away, just to know that things are coming out of your mind. And provided it's not the same idea, which is is a composer's dread when you keep rewriting the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
So I'm just happy sometimes when it's a new idea and it doesn't sound like another tune I've written or a part of a tune I've written before. And that usually means that's usually a great thing because I'm listening to great music. And whenever I'm listening to great music, whether it's in person, on the streaming, or just putting LP or CD on, it's like I realize, okay, this is so important to do because this informs me and gets me thinking about music in different ways and challenges me to be a composer who doesn't write that same thing over and over again.
Let me ask you this: do you ever have you'll sit down at the piano and you'll start playing? I'm like, I got something here, and you're right, and it takes away from whatever you sat down at the piano to do.
Yeah, all the time.
Because that happens to me constantly.
Yeah. Oh, and absolutely.
So I have all these like pieces of songs written because I'll start writing it and then I'll I gotta finish.
Yeah, for sure. I had a very unconventional beginning to into playing music. I think partly due to being diagnosed as a kid with ADHD. It usually meant if I was going to sit down and play music, it was an escape. It was like I just let my mind go wherever it went. And so, of course, it provided my piano teacher with a lot of grief because I didn't practice what I should have practiced. But I would do exactly what you're talking about. I'd sit down and I'd just play. Yeah. I'd follow whichever whim that I had. And, after a while, like an hour would go by, 2 hours would go by, almost to the point where I more actively like to create variations on things that my piano teacher wanted me to play than play that actual Bach thing itself or the Mozart tune that I was supposed to play. So I'd come up with my own version, and it'd just drive my teacher crazy because she'd say, "Why don't you just practice it?" Yeah. But my mind, being a little neurodivergent, it didn't go that way. Yeah. And I don't think she realized that if all I did was what she wanted me to do, I probably wouldn't even sit down at the piano. I needed to be expressive. I needed to kind of push the direction of my music. Even though I had no interest in jazz at the time, I was still reharmonizing. I was still creating. I was still developing songs. But to me, it was just so I wouldn't get bored.
Now, for some reason, I thought your first instrument was trombone.
It was my second instrument.
Your second.
I started playing the organ was my first instrument.
Okay.
And it's because we had an organ in the house, and we had no piano at the time, but commercials would come on TV, and so I'd hear a commercial. So just think early 1980s. You'd hear a car commercial or something.
Jingle.
Yeah,
jingles, right?
Have you driven a Ford lately?
Yeah.
And I'd hear that. And so the first thing I'd do is I'd as a 5, 6, 7-year-old, run over to the organ and start imitating the commercials that I heard. First with the melodies, then I started putting the accompaniment to it, the chords. And I didn't realize it wasn't something that everyone did, but it was such a fun pastime. Did you
do it right away?
Pretty soon. Yeah. Now I couldn't make full use of the organ. Like I didn't have all the stops down, and I didn't have my pedal stuff done. I used it mostly as a keyboard instrument, but it was so fascinating, so much fun. And I think, at that point, my parents they took notice of it and got me a piano. So I started learning piano when I was 7 and did that and didn't stop until adulthood, past college. But I picked up the trombone in grade 5, like a lot of kids do, to play in band. And so the trombone kind of was my focus for years, but I never stopped playing the piano. I always played.
Why did you pick up trombone?
I have no idea. I loved it from the get-go because the teacher wanted me to play French horn, and what's weird is I was always a shy kid. I was an introvert, and very rarely would I exert opinion over a teacher, especially at that age. I would just say yes and do it. But when she said, "I want you to play the French horn," I felt like screaming and saying, "No, the trombone is what I want to do. I want to do the trombone." And to my credit, I said, "I really, really want to play the trombone." And are you ready for this? For what she said? Sure. She was not that married to it either. She thought the French horn would be a good instrument. I picked the trombone as the best decision I ever made because it put me in jazz. Pretty quickly I was able to hear the trombone in jazz and hear how it related to me. And so by the time, when
who were you listening to when you first started? Do you remember? No. So there wasn't someone you heard and I want to play trombone.
Nope. It was just honest to God, I have no idea what the pull was. It wasn't like it wasn't like a Hollywood movie where you're looking at the instruments and the trombone was glowing over the other instruments. Yeah. It was just something in me said I should play the trombone. I want to play the trombone. And it wasn't until that point either. It wasn't like I was bothering my mom saying, "Give me a trombone, give me a trombone." Yeah. But I never regretted. I how sometimes they say your instrument picks you. That was honest to God case of the trombone picking me when I was confronted with another instrument and a teacher telling me you're going to play this instrument, and God forbid I said no. I want to play the trombone. but I don't regret it. I regret, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek, of course, the amount of upkeep practice you have to do on a brass instrument, which is one of the reasons why I don't really play it much now, because the amount of long tones I'd have to do per day just to
long tones.
Long tones, yeah, breathing into the horn and just holding out a note, so your chop, so your embouchure is flexible, and we have to in a brass instrument you have to do that for some people who are really religious about it do it an hour a day, and you should at least do 15 minutes, a half hour, if you want to do anything on the instrument that's going to be productive, and it doesn't change. I talk to plenty of jazz musicians who are at the top of their field and brass players who still they do the long tones, where we're all subject to that to be productive on our instrument.
Yeah. So going back to, do you remember who you were listening to when you first started?
Oh yeah. When I first started, nobody really. Yeah. I mean, what I was listening to was orchestral music, and I loved, my bridge into really more complex music, believe it or not, was Star Wars, and it was kind of the more John Williams orchestral music. I didn't realize
it's great stuff.
It's beautiful, Yeah. And so I was addicted to that. I burned through 3 LPs of the Star Wars soundtrack by the time I was 10. The needle would skip over it, and then I was riding my bike out to the 2 miles to the library to borrow their copy of Star Wars until I ruined that. I'm sorry, Harperwood's Public Library. Yeah. But that was my musical connection. So I definitely heard the trombone there, and I think there's a large reason I wanted to play a brass instrument was because of its role in orchestral music. And then later on, for sure, when when I was in the middle of my middle school studies, I heard big bands. And I started to hear big bands in different places. One of them, weirdly enough, was the fireworks in Parcells Middle School at Grosse Pointe. They had what is his name? He's long gone now. He's a drummer from the big band era, and he used to play. And this will probably people will know exactly who it is. He used to play on the Boblo boats all the time. But he came.
They're redoing the Boblo boat. Did you know that? Yeah.
No. How awesome.
There's like a whole campaign to redo that. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I mean, those are 100-year-old boats now.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's only one they're doing though. I don't know. But
well, there's a lot of childhood memories there.
Oh my God, yeah. I watched a whole documentary. Anyway.
Yeah. So it was so hearing that big band, that was such a big deal. I remember just being enamored with the whole thing. It was, I think now in retrospect, it was hearing the harmony that was a little thicker, the textures that were a little bit thicker, and of course the groove. So that immediately put me into the mix of being into big bands. So I went out to the record store, got Tommy Dorsey albums, Glenn Miller albums. So on the one hand, I would be listening to Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey, and then I would flip over to Guns N' Roses, Def Leppard.
Yeah. So how old are you now?
Bands. Seventh grade.
Seventh grade?
Yep,
Right.
Seventh grade at this point. And still not into jazz.
It's so great, though, that you're doing that. You're like balancing your taste. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
I don't think a lot of kids weren't doing that, were they?
I'm not sure.
I mean, I don't think I was doing that when I was that age.
I just always felt like when people say you get bit by the bug.
Yeah.
I was bit by the music bug early on, and even though it wasn't jazz yet, it was still like creative exploration in the music. And I felt when I heard the music, it gave me the fuel to play what I want on the piano and kind of imitate some of those things and make up my own compositions. And not that they were like profound by any means, but they allowed me to investigate the things I was listening to, and it was this great chain, this great loop of listen to something, imitate it, figure out what it is, and then move on to the next thing.
So because this is one of the things I did want to touch on. Were you composing back then?
Yeah. I still have God bless my piano teacher, Carolyn Bargula. She worked at Amato's Music in Harper Woods, and so I would take lessons over there, and I would bring to her some of those compositions I was doing. I came in as a 7-year-old, like writing these tunes, and so she would document and write them out because I didn't have the capacity at that time. I didn't know written music. I didn't know how to write my music down, but she taught me how to.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
how did you like document it though? And it was just in your head or tape it?
Yeah, no. I would just memorize the tunes and play them for her, and then she'd write them down. And so there's all these tunes that exist, going through my little box of nostalgia stuff of, these songs from the early 80s that conspicuously are on white keys more than black keys because that was more comfortable for sure when I just started. But I loved it, and she encouraged me. And one of the gifts she gave me was learning how to transcribe yourself. Learning what's in your head and how to write it out. And that, from an early age, that served me really well because kind of knowing what you're listening to, it's almost like I can hear the music and see the music at the same time on the staff.
That's so great.
But that was like due to her doing that at an early age.
Yeah.
And having a pretty good ear too. But
So when did jazz come along?
Ninth grade.
Ninth grade.
Ninth grade. So, ninth grade, a couple things happened. One, I joined band, and this is the more boring side of it. I joined band, and one of the trombone players in the section said, "We need you to come and play in the jazz band." And we had the Grosse Pointe North-South Jazz Band, and I went in ninth grade, followed him to a rehearsal. He said, "You can just come to one if you don't want to go to any more. I'll even drive you." This is how this guy was so cool. His name was Keith Ferguson. I still remember that. Right. And that was all it took, was one rehearsal. And I was like, okay, I'm coming every week. and it was great because he would drive me my whole ninth grade. Then he graduated. And then I took his place and started recruiting people, pulling them in because I loved it so much. And that was a huge deal to me. The other thing was taking piano lessons with Bess Spanier. And
sure.
And Bess, the great thing here at Music Hall, there's a nice little concert concert program kind of framed downstairs by Jessica. Every time I come down there, I love looking at that because it just reminds me of all the great memories and everything she taught me. But
my parents used to go see her. They loved her.
She was wonderful. My dad took me to see her when I was 7, and I never forgot. She let me sit in at the DIA.
Really?
Yeah, I sat in and played with her, and then she was real kind.
Yeah.
But then when in ninth grade, I went to see her. Now keep in mind, and I think you'll dig this story. So I was used to kind of like, sorry, Carolyn, pushing my piano teacher around a little bit at the time, my classical piano teacher, and not because I was being disrespectful, but I didn't realize I was being disrespectful, and just not doing what I should have. So eventually she said, "You know what? I'm going to take you to a new teacher, and it seems like you really love playing jazz now," because this was the 7th, 8th grade, my time with her. She felt like she was ready to kind of move me on a little bit. So she sent me to Bess, and I went to my first lesson with her, and it was fairly nice. She was 5'1", at the time, in her 60s, Greek heritage, blind, 5'1", really short, nice, but take no BS, and I found that out the hard way.
Uh-oh.
So the first lesson was fine. She gave me her expectations, and I'm like, yeah. Okay. And I was ready to pull my old routine, which is come back the next week, not having practiced what I was supposed to, but did my own, and thinking, oh, she's going to be thrilled with me. I'm doing my own thing. And so I come back the second week, and I had my whole thing worked out. And so my mom dropped me off there, let me go, and I'm sitting at the piano telling her that how I not had worked on what she wanted me to, and so she walks over to me and starts gathering my books up, and while I'm talking, I'm like, what is she doing? Then walked out to the front door. She lived in Grayton in Detroit at the time, and to open the door, out went the books onto the front lawn. And so not only was I was kind of in shock. She said she didn't yell at me.
Yeah.
She wasn't mean. She goes, "You come back to me when you're ready to learn." And sent me out, and I was in there 5 minutes. So at this time there were no cell phones.
Right.
So I had to walk a mile and a half. No, not that far. Maybe about a mile to East Warren, and find a payphone. Call my mom. Come get me. My mom made me go and apologize to her. So I had to walk back, apologize for doing that. Had to pay for the lesson. And
She made you walk back?
No. She drove me back to her house. Did I say walk back?
Yeah.
My gosh. No. She did drive me back. It was humiliating. But it was a crossroads in my life because it made me really face the question of, are you going to take this seriously?
Yeah.
Are you going to take growth seriously? This opportunity has been presented to you. So I made that decision, I guess, partly out of shame, but also partly out of, I guess, maybe I saw the opportunity a little bit, and it was a chance to kind of prove myself. And so I practiced and I practiced, and I went back. I had to pay for the lessons. That it was before the first lesson. I would, if it probably hadn't messed up, I probably could have gotten away with not paying for them. At that point, I had to pay for them. But even in retrospect, that was a great thing because, it made me take ownership of everything, take ownership of myself, take ownership of the lessons, and my future, So I went at that point, I went back. It took her a little while to trust me, but when she saw that I was consistently coming back and practicing what I was doing, she would constantly put the lessons on tape. And so her thing was I had to go home and listen to the lessons. Mm-hmm. And so I've got all these tapes at home of they're so embarrassing. I remember one of them, she said, have you ever heard the song Green Dolphin Street? And Green Dolphin Street's a jazz standard that everybody knows. And here's me going, no, I've never heard of that. And my voice not quite reaching, where it is now. And, but the whole thing, it was wonderful because it made me start to take myself seriously as a musician. And at the time, I hadn't had the greatest life. Without getting into the nitty gritty of it, music was a sanctuary for me. And it was a really good thing to have, and I wasn't about to let that go. And instead of, I was afraid a little bit, I guess, in retrospect of jazz because I couldn't do it right away. And I was used to being able to do whatever I wanted to do. So I maybe somewhat lazy,
So you played jazz before you listened to it, really, right? Is that what?
No, not really. But I played the music I wanted to play. I played.
Yeah.
So when I heard Star Wars, I played Star Wars.
Yeah.
Now I couldn't play the whole orchestral arrangements right away, but I could, to my satisfaction, play what I wanted, and so I think it kind of made me a little bit. I don't know if lazy is the right word, but when things got too hard, I didn't reach. I didn't go for it as much. I just said, well, this is something I can't do. But she was the first person to say, look, you can't do this right away, but you put the time in and you can. And I remember when she one of the challenges she posed to me was, she said, if you learn 30 songs, and she said, I'm going to send you out on a gig. And I was like, really? So it took me a while. It wasn't until my sophomore year in school that I had enough chops that I barely could get through 30 songs. But, I could. And she kept her promise and sent me to play a solo gig at a house in Grosse Pointe that, they just wanted background music. So it was actually the perfect gig for me, And I went and did that. They handed me the cash. Not taxed. It's like cash in your pocket. It was a beautiful thing. Then I was like, I can really kind of see myself playing this music. So by the time I got to 10th grade, I was there.
You're hooked.
Yeah, I was wanting to play this music. And then lessons became more of not what she wanted to teach me, but I started to come with like songs and ideas that I had, and then she would kind of like help me and figure out what I was doing and how that related to being a functional professional musician and what I could do. I mean, she was just a beautiful teacher. She knew how to get me hooked in, and then once I was hooked in, I had enough questions on my own that she kind of saw how to shape me into the musician that I wanted to be. So it was really remarkable. And if you'll permit me, I have another great story coming from this one.
Yeah.
So I mentioned, I started doing a couple gigs. I started doing a few more gigs. My mom, I didn't really talk to that much about that stuff.
So how long did you take lessons with her?
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah, my high school years.
Okay, so okay. I just want to get an age and Okay.
So this is going into 11th grade at this point. I'd done a few gigs now, and I had built upon the gigs I did where they called out. I had callback gigs, and so I started to have a little bit of money, and I remember, that there were things I wanted that I couldn't have. And as a kid, I was a tall kid growing up, and I had to sleep on a really, really short bed that I hated. My feet would hang over the bed,
Like Elf.
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It was, and I wanted a stereo. I had this really small little, I consider it my Fisher Price record player practically. It had really bad sound and stuff. So there was stuff that I wanted, and now that I had this money in my pocket, I started buying it. I started buying the things I wanted. And I remember my mom, I was in my room. I had my new bed that was longer, that I could sleep in. I'm living like a king, I thought, in 15, 16 years old. And my mom comes in, and when your parents have this look on your face that's like, immediately, they don't even got to say a word. The way they're looking at you, like, I just felt like my heart drop, in my chest. And I thought, oh my God, some kind of talk was coming. And first I thought, this looks like, this is kind of like a weird talk, like a birds and the bees talk or something. Yeah. She says, sit down. I sit up on the side of the bed, and she's looking at the stuff around her, and all the stuff I have. And I'll never forget this. She goes, Scott, you got to answer me honestly. Are you dealing drugs?
I was going to say that as a joke. Are you serious?
And so was she. So was she. And my face flushed red. Because if you would have known me then, I was an introvert. I was quiet.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and just the thought, and straight laced enough. I didn't have friends. Period. So I definitely didn't have friends who were into drugs yet. So, it was like, to me that was like, what?
Wow.
And
I was thinking that, like.
Yeah, I that's where that conversation went, and I'm telling her, no, it's I got this from my gigs, and she says, you don't make that kind of money playing gigs. And she just, to her it was like a kid gets a job as a busboy, a kid gets a job, at Meyer or something, and going and playing gigs and getting $200 in cash is not something that normally happens. And she was, that's right, but this was different. This was something that I loved, and the money, as cool as it was, and maybe that was a little bit of the attraction in the beginning, was not the reason to do it. And even to this day, the reason to do it is the music, and I was just in love with the music, and and afforded me a few things like that. I got that better stereo, the longer mattress.
Longer bed.
Yeah, but yeah.
That's a great story.
Sold all those drugs.
Yeah.
I hope you don't clip that.
No, actually.
We're going to talk with Scott Gwinnell. I sold all those drugs.
That's a great clip right there.
That's a great clip. Yeah. So, hey, so Cafe Chronicles.
Yeah.
So, can you chronicle a time at the cafe that kind of sticks out to you?
Oh my gosh! And this is going on. The jam has been going on almost 10 years now.
Isn't that crazy?
So
Aretha's Jazz Jam.
Yeah, Aretha's
Sunday
Jazz.
nights at 7.
Sunday night 7 p.m.
Scott Gwinnell hosts, just so everyone knows.
Yep. Let's see what. God, they all seem to run together after a while, but things that I remember are like when some of the new staff comes through, and when I meet them for the first time, there's been so many like players in that gig that have made it run and that have been like integral to its success. When meeting Derek for the first time, when Derek was before he was the house manager and was
Derek Gillis.
Yeah, Derek Gillis, absolutely.
Runs
And I
the room.
remember, liking him the first time, and then having this great professional relationship all the way up to last week, and on, you know, meeting Candace for the first time. I remember that. My gosh, so it's like the relationships stand out more than the actual moments of. I'm trying to think if there
that's
is.
interesting. Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there is a moment.
Let me help you out because one just popped in my head.
Go for it, please.
I wasn't necessarily. I came in after it happened though, but somebody. It was during a jam where somebody sprayed some mace or some pepper spray or something.
Oh, that is a moment.
What?
That's a moment. Okay,
You know what I'm talking
I
about?
take
Do you
that
remember?
back.
Because I don't know the entire story because I wasn't down there at the time.
Yeah. I don't think it's not a.
But people had to clear the room, right?
Yeah. This was outside. This was out front. And,
Okay.
And this is at the time. We were in full swing of the roof parties.
Oh, right. 350 Terrace. Yeah.
And yep, on 350 Terrace, and there was something had gone amiss out front, and there were people. It almost looked like they were yelling and they wanted in. I'm guessing maybe they were maybe sauced a little bit or something, and they didn't want them going upstairs, so they wouldn't leave it alone. They were pounding on the door, and we're slightly down. We're not at the corner. We're at the front doors, and I'm talking to the other musicians, and we just look down there like, what's going on? And all of a sudden, we see this. I couldn't see the door open. I just saw a hand stretched out, ready to spray something.
Inside?
No, outside.
Oh, outside.
This is outside. And then everyone just scattered. Like, boom, every direction. And we're looking like, what's going on? And unfortunately, the wind was down. It was a downwind, And if I'm telling you, only like the smallest amount even touched us. And that was enough. Like, I had I had a sore throat. My eyes watered. It was just the bare minimum. I cannot imagine what it's like to take pepper spray.
Getting that on you?
Yeah, like directly in your face. Jeez. Like that was just the most little amount. And then the three of us out there in the front talking were just like, oh my God, we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
And that had to be a good 20 feet away from, because you can imagine where the front doors are of music hall compared to the corner door.
Yeah.
It's not, they're not next to each other. So it just floated down there, and I thought, wow, good times upstairs.
Wow. Another thing just popped in my head. It's not really a cafe, but it was a great night. I thought was the James Bond.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was James, but that was a Cars and Stars, right?
Cars and Stars, yeah.
Our fundraiser, an annual fundraiser, where we recreated we did a James Bond themed.
Yep. That year was a James
/ Austin Powers, right?
That's right.
You tell the story.
That was.
Or not story, but that's,
that was really my, besides knowing you, that was really my big introduction to music hall, and Vince and Karen, and the rest of the crew that was there at the time. And I remember sitting on the meeting that, preparing for it, because I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know what Vince wanted to do. And Vince, in very Vincian fashion, like, my God, it was such a big production. I was at the same time, I was in awe and then scared for my life, because I was thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to make this vision happen? Because, he has really grand visions for things. And I didn't know him then. So it wasn't, I didn't know what that meant and how that would translate, because he was giving me the lowdown with, I want your big band. We're going to have 6 vocalists. I'm like, 6 vocalists.
But he wanted you to recreate the James Bond theme.
Yeah. So he wanted me to do that. He said, can your big band play that? And I said, whoa. I said, first of all, these charts don't exist. Secondly, we'd have to like make them work for the vocalist, put them in the vocalist keys. And, at the time he was like, I want this chart, this chart, this chart, this chart. So we got to about 13 charts. This was in April before the June.
Of course.
Thing.
You can't do it too far in advance.
So what I pretty quickly realized was I'm going to have to transcribe all of these tunes off of 2-track recordings, where everything was just stereo mic'd, and so like your oboe part is buried, in this full orchestra recording. So I was pretty much going to have to get a steady diet of Bond movies for the next 2 months, and then first of all transcribe the orchestral recordings, and then take those transcriptions and turn them into big band charts in the keys of these vocalists. So and do 13 of these in 2 months.
Yeah.
So that was some of the most strenuous work that I've ever done in my life for something. Now, to Vince's credit, first of all, he pulled it all off, which, geez, oh my gosh, so that was amazing. We got all our tunes in, in every production, there's always surprises. So, and then this was no different. There were surprises, but for sure, the show was pulled off.
Yeah.
It came off, and so that was my introduction to music hall and Vince. And I couldn't believe that, someone had such he at the time he was middle-aged, I was middle-aged at the time, but he had such a youthful energy to the whole process. And
he still does, man.
Yeah, still does.
Yeah.
I was going to say that
What year was
hasn't
that?
changed.
I'm so bad at that kind of stuff. That was a while ago.
Yeah, I want to say that was probably 12, 13 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
But it was just amazing, because that was the first time when I could say, I'm just going to ride this vision. I'm going to do my job. I was being paid for it, so it wasn't like I was just giving of my time. Vince was very nice in hiring me for at a price that was respectful of my work, and then so when it was all done, it was like, my God, all this came together.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was, and so much so that I've bugged him in the past few years. I say, let's do a
revisit, right?
Yeah, let's revisit the Bond thing. I've got all the charts already, so they don't need to be rewritten again. And
so we did have Austin Powers come from the ceiling,
yes.
right?
And
Okay.
I'll never know that. And this had nothing to do with him, of course, but there was just some kind of breakdown in communication about pulling the scrim up from the curtain up and just leaving the scrim down. Mm-hmm. And I was supposed to get my cue from Austin Powers hitting the ground, coming down from a rope from the ceiling.
Yeah.
And then I break into the Austin Powers theme.
Yeah.
So
is that the da-na-na-na?
That's right, Soul Bossa Nova,
the
great Quincy Jones. And so I couldn't see anything. So I'm sitting there, I'm waiting to take my cue, and I'm waiting for the curtain to come up. So I'm over there, bring the curtain up, come on. And I'm never yelling, but I'm yelling to the side, what's going on? Bring the curtain up. And can someone cue me something? So I'm listening for anything, and I didn't hear it. And the deal with that song was, this was that he's supposed to come down on the rope, hit the ground. We come in with the, that part. And then the big surprise is the Cass Tech marching band is supposed to come from the wings and march out into the front of march out into center stage and kind of accompany the big band on the tune. And it's supposed to be this big, awesome thing. So without the curtain coming down, or without the curtain going up, I had no idea when to start. So I'm in rehearsal, it was about a minute in or something. So I'm just all right, I'm just going to go for it. Blind faith completely. So I hit it and we start. And then halfway through, the curtain comes up. I'm like, oh, thank God. And then it wasn't exactly timed well. which already made me nervous. Then when the band was supposed to come out, some kid got cold feet on the right side. I'll never forget this. So the left side, they came out from behind the curtain, and on the right side, they got halfway there, then someone just stopped cold, and people were running into him, and the three people came out to the middle, and then there was this big gap in the line, and and then it was interesting. It didn't come together the way it should, but it was fun.
Was that the show where there was blood dripping from the ceiling?
Yes, because another thing that
that's
happened.
What I thought you were going to say.
one of the there were dancers on strings or on like on not ropes but like scarves. They were scarves.
Yeah, those.
And one of the dancers cut her calf, I believe, on the
it
drum.
On a musician, right?
Yeah, she hit the drum protection shield.
Oh yeah, right.
The plexiglass.
Yeah.
And so she cut it pretty bad. So as she went up, she was bleeding and the blood was dripping down on the bandstand.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was and that was one of a few things. I mean, I remember also on that one, after the marching band was done, they were there. They wanted to play, so they just went out front on Madison and started playing. Yeah. And they played a concert out there on Madison, and I was in music hall. I'm like, how come I hear music outside? Well, because there's 100 kids playing a concert right outside our function, and it was just one of some interesting things. I remember Thornetta Davis was on it, but she was playing a gig in Windsor, I think, playing a jazz festival.
Yeah, she
out
came
there.
in. Yeah,
and so she was trying her hardest to get over there, and she didn't make it in time for her to sing Goldfinger and the Shirley Bassey tunes, Goldfinger and Diamonds Are Forever. So we had Trish Shandor there,
right.
And Trish said, I'll step in and do those tunes unrehearsed, just sang them with the big band first time out. So she was a trooper on that. And it wasn't Thornetta's fault. She just got held up. And but it's just amazing how there's so many things happened that night. There's still to this day people come up to me and talk about that gig.
You told me that.
Yeah,
That's
musicians
crazy.
on that gig say, hey, remember when we did the James Bond thing?
It was so cool, though, because if you know the opening
incredible.
of the James Bond movies, the little eye, the lens, we recreated that kind of went across the stage.
That's
and
so
followed
cool.
it.
It was incredible.
I
mean, the vision itself was incredible that Vince had, but to pull it off, my God, and then mix Austin Powers into that.
I wonder if that's on film anywhere.
I would love to see that.
Yeah, me too.
Oh man, if you find that, please share with me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because that would be a gift. I would love to see that and see all the great things we did that night.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, before I let you go, I wanted to talk real quick about your vocal jazz workshop.
Yeah,
you want to talk about that?
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right here at Music Hall on July 21st to 25th from 1 to 5 p.m., we are doing a vocal jazz workshop for anyone in the community that wants to get better and more confident as a jazz singer. You could come from any background, be any experience, any age above 10. I will say that most of the enrollees are high school to college to adult. We do have a couple high school students, but most everyone is an adult or an adult or a college student. And what we're really trying to provide to people who enroll in this is how to get to, like, it's a pre-professional workshop, meaning we're trying to help them become professional jazz singers or be more functional in the way they play. So that's going to include, of course, like things like improvisation, musicality, learning how to melodically style songs, all this kind of like fun stuff that, you really don't, like, vocalists don't get that chance that often to work on. I think jazz is maybe unfairly focused more on instrumentalists, where they kind of just say vocalists get to sing your song and then have a seat.
Yeah.
Which I never liked that. I always thought that was a raw deal, that they've gotten. And so this actually allows them to partake in a lot of those same type of things and doesn't treat them like a second-class jazz musician.
Yeah.
They get to be the stars.
Yeah. I took the workshop last year. It was fantastic. It helped my singing,
I'm so glad, Ted.
It gave me confidence. It was just fantastic.
Well, so it's so great to actually work with you. And not to mention, we have like a killer faculty. We have.
Oh yeah, they were excellent.
We have one of our teachers taught at Berklee School of Music. One of them taught at Bowling Green. One of them is at University of Rhode Island, where they have a really flourishing jazz program.
Is it the same?
It is. It's
instructors coming back.
Yep. April Teeney, Atla D. Champlain, and Ellie Martin. So all three of those are, they've been around. They've seen all kinds of vocalists, so they're the right people to help diagnose, what you need to do to move forward on your journey.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest things about this is, they spend all week on stage. So it's like you're getting that stage experience constantly. So if you can't get to a jam session or take that couple minutes on stage, you're there for hours. And then it culminates in a concert Sunday afternoon right before the jam session, where all the vocalists will get to sing what they worked on for friends and family.
All right, excellent. And if someone wants to take part in this, where do they go?
The place to go is www.helpwithjazz.com.
Okay.
www.
W.
I have a hard time saying that. .helpwithjazz.com.
WW. Okay. All right, excellent. I think we should have a link on our website, musichall.org, somewhere.
Yep.
Or Jazz Cafe.
Great.
There should be a link there as well.
And I know I just talked to Jessie, our Instagram social media person, and she what a nice person, by the way.
Yeah.
She said she'd be happy to promote it on the Instagram sites too. So if they go to the Music Hall Instagram site anytime in the near future, I think it'll be on there.
All right, excellent. You're doing great work, man.
Thanks, Ted.
Yeah.
Well, Ted, I've always enjoyed our professional relationship, our friendship, and it's just so nice to be part of an organization that cares about the community, that is creative in the ways that it helps, and such a forward-leaning group that is all about the arts. It's a dream of mine. So thank you for all that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. One last question.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite line from Star Wars?
Oh my gosh, I can't quote anything. So
oh, come on, you just saw it.
I'm a paraphraser all the way. I can't even like memorize lyrics. That's why one of the reasons I never became a singer.
Yeah.
I can't memorize things. So it'll be. I'll tell you what I can't give the quotes, but I can tell you what my favorite scene is.
Okay.
It's the scene where where Uncle Owen, Aunt Beru, and Luke are sitting at the table, where they're telling him he's not going to be able to. He has to stay on another year and work on the farm.
Drinking the blue milk.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason for that being one of my favorite scenes is because it sets up the scene that's coming right after it so beautifully. And then the scene that comes up right after it is where he stares off into the binary sunset.
Yeah.
And that scene wouldn't have meant what it meant if they didn't establish his relationship with his aunt and uncle, as they actually care about him. They're not just like, like hating on him like Harry Potter or something. They actually do care about him, and they seem to have his interests. So it means it's so more meaningful, when he's kind of looking off that sunset into going into something else, because he is leaving behind two relatives that care for him. So it just, it was a 1-2 punch. But you needed that first part to make the second part so meaningful And so you combine that with the wonderful music and the cinematography. It's like, oh my God, just a perfect scene.
What a beautiful way to end the podcast.
That is a good way to end the podcast.
Scott Gwinnell, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.